Tucked up against a deep bay and surrounded by mountains and water, Port Townsend on the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State is known as an artist community, a maritime town, a tourist destination, as well as home to approximately 10,000 residents who, for the most part, take life a bit less serious than inhabitants of other towns in the area. Port Townsend is also known as one of the most haunted little cities in the state. While driving through downtown or even walking around, you are met with what we like to call a living museum of a community that keeps the past in the present. And that is what has been accomplished since the start of the City of Dreams revival in 1975. Behind each window is a story. There's the story of today and the stories of yesteryear. Four-story limestone or brick buildings restored with great care to highlight the details that make Port Townsend a true Victorian seaport. Over 300 commercial and residential buildings recall the day of gingerbread and gold leaf. Every structure a palette of color and texture that reminds us that even 150 years ago, beauty was a quest and imagination was only limited by the depth of one's pocket and the time needed to create the dream that for some turned nightmare. One would never suspect that the little candle store in the undertown, so full of bright-colored wax and the scent of exotic fragrances, replaces the smell of tragedy and gun smoke. The blood-red candles displayed on the front counter replacing the stain of sorrow and confusion that puddled around the body of a man who on the outside had it all, but on the inside was just as hollow as the smoke of a blown-out candle. The heated debauchery of purchased passions now remembered in the words of just some storytellers. When walking into the Bishop Hotel, built on the edge of what used to be Chinatown, you may be met by the little girl who calls the second-floor landing a fun place to sit and play what some think to be a game of jacks on the floor. Yet when you look again, all you see is maybe a shadow on the floor where she was just sitting. Don't worry, she's still there. It's not your imagination, and no, we don't know who she is. We will tell you our thoughts on this when you take a tour, though. Two of the many tragic, twisted lives of Port Townsend's spirit. The spirit of Port Townsend is old, older than the cracks in the granite cornerstones of our downtown buildings. It is as aged as the water that laps the shores, and is as timeless as the sands hidden underneath the blacktop of progress. That is not what makes it haunted, though. It is more than just being old or a place of tragic happenings. No, in order to find a possible answer as to why the city is home to over 200 known and shared ghost stories and hundreds of more myths, folk tales, and legends, one must dig into the dark shadows of the past, push past the light of the accepted history, and into the rich tapestry of the lore that stretches back into the time before mortar and glass. And that is where the story of Port Townsend and its twisted history truly starts. Today is part one of this series. Over the next few weeks, we'll explore from multiple angles this haunted yet vibrant community. The basic history of Port Townsend will be told, but as you know, I am a storyteller first and foremost. So the stories must be shared in order to examine why Port Townsend is a truly twisted town. A town rich with murder, crime, debauchery, and mayhem, and its fair share of ghosts. We will hear from Gussie Dupp, the Port Townsend Grey Witch, and she will discuss why Port Townsend is home to so many shadows from yesterday. Discussions on the spiritualism movement in Port Townsend, to the open pagan lifestyles that so many of this town observed and still observe today. Tink, Pixie Dupp, will weigh in on her thoughts as to why murder was as common as a lover's caress on a moonlit beach. With years of crime research and the independent murder investigations for unsolved crimes, she brings a unique blend of theory, mystery, and opinion as to the darker side of man's passions. Our lead investigator, All Cut, will roadmap the type of spirits ghosts, shades, and horrors that peek at us from the dull glass windows of street lamp reflections in the streets of Port Townsend's nights. Having investigated many of the buildings and locations, that the past is still with us and part of every day, and they still call the Key City home, and Alcutt will weigh in on his reasonings and thoughts as to why that may be the case. We hope you enjoy our thoughts and insights about this haunted seaside community that we have learned after 6 years of calling home. Port Townsend truly is the headquarters of the paranormal activity in the Pacific Northwest. So subscribe and enjoy what we have to share, and stay twisted.